I think there are technologies that are going to radically change the way care is delivered. And then there are other trends that are actually going to disrupt healthcare that are not necessarily technology driven, but technology supported. So let me address the second one first, actually, which is to say that with more access to health information, with better information sharing, such as leveraging things like FHIR and stuff like that, interoperability, things like that, you're going to have this ability for other providers to deliver care, other people to step into delivering care. So new entrants into the marketplace, and that could be things like the CVS Aetna merger is one great example. All the moves that Walmart is making in this space. Will Amazon ever get into delivering care? Personally, I'm a little skeptical. I don't think they really actually want to be that far into care delivery. But you're seeing more and more folks saying, hey, you know what? The healthcare system's not working that well. And we have this ability to touch people. So I think that's one big trend you're seeing. And that's empowered by technology. In terms when it comes to working with startups, it's a delicate balance, and there's no, both sides are challenging. I would say is that startups are typically not organized well enough because they're startups. That's by their own nature. They're not necessarily organized well enough to work with a large enterprise. It's a challenge. At the same time, large enterprises aren't used to working with startups. Startups just want to kind of be like, all right, let's just get it done. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Let's just execute. Because their goal is to grow. Their goal is to build a business. At the same time, the larger organization said, well, is sitting there thinking, well, I yes, this is a need I have, but I also have to protect my business. I have to make sure that I'm, achieving all the security requirements I have to hit. I have to make sure that I'm not putting my members or patients in danger, and things like that. And those things are intention. Those are always going to be in tension with each other. And that means the provider or the health system or the payer, whatever the large organization is going to have a process. And process and provide, in large organizations is a necessary thing, but sometimes it exists for its own sake. Innovation needs to be grounded in the organization's needs. To actually sit back, take a step back and say, okay, what are our actually challenges as an organization? And really dig down and not just say, okay, this is the top level challenge, but as you think about lean process and the 5 whys, if you ask why long enough, you'll actually get down to the root cause, identify the root cause and see what we can do to address those things. And then also, what address the feasibility of actually trying to solve them, in addition to addressing the value of solving them. I would say one of the biggest pain points, I think, is that honestly, on the back office side of things, there's just an enormous amount of stuff that's their legacy systems, that are just not, and this is not a CCA specific thing. This is everywhere. Everyone's got legacy systems, and they're not designed for the way things work today. So automation, bringing automation to the table. Yeah, I mentioned that example of accounts payable automation. There's all kinds of other sorts of places where you can, where you're currently using humans, and it becomes an inconsistent, imperfect process. Or it's just very labor intensive for very low value. You can automate these things. And it's not about, one of the things we found, at NYP when I was there, when we started automating some of these processes, we weren't eliminating jobs. What we were doing is we were upskilling people. So we were taking away a lot of the drudgery. At NYP, for instance, people would pull down the claims each day to see what would have been approved and what had been rejected, pull down the denials, and then have to sort through the denials and go figure out what they were going to work on. Well, we automated that part of things. No one ever came to work each day saying, gosh, I can't wait to sort through all the denial list and then work the denials. So let's just move you right to working the denials, which is a human thing, and take the drudgery out of it. So I think there's a lot that can be done just in places like that I'm very excited about. Bringing in machine learning models to really help us digest our data better. We have an enormous amounts of data, but just because you have lots of data doesn't mean you have any intelligence associated with it. And I look at, sort of working through the data processes, 3 steps. One is just the governance. Just what are the data? What's the right data? Turning it into intelligence is the next thing. How do you actually, and there's all sorts of great tools out there, Tableau, Looker, stuff like that. And we do a lot of work with Looker already. But then there's also the next step. And we talked about some of the stuff with the artificial intelligence is, how do you turn intelligence into decision-making? and giving people tools to actually help them make decisions. That's really critical as well. So I think that's another area that I'm very excited about. The digital therapeutic space is very interesting. It's still really early, and I've been saying this for probably 5 years now. And some of it's going to shake out well, and some of it's not. Folks like Proteus had a lot of promise, but ultimately, the delivery model was way too expensive for very little additional value. At the same time, we've seen, the incredible ability to do things like treat, PTSD by leveraging virtual reality. There's a whole lot of stuff out there from a digital therapeutic where we're just scratching the surface. Because if you think about it, the brain's just this sort of big gooey computer. There are typically very few side effects with digital therapeutics, if you think about it, versus, for instance, a medication or something like that. So I would say those are 3 areas I'm particularly excited about. The next 5 to 10 years in healthcare, I think you're going to see more transition towards health management. You're going to see more sort of continuous monitoring, IoT devices. This is my my IoT reads my heart rate, respiration rate, things like that. You're going to see more and more of that sort of stuff. It's going to become more prevalent. You're going to see more people playing in this space that have not traditionally been healthcare providers. Apple's certainly got, all the major tech players have significant ambitions. Everyone's going to try and play on their strengths to get into healthcare, which means more and more power is going to devolve away from the provider. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest things. And you're going to see power shifting away from providers, and even some of that power possibly shifting away from payers too. The incumbents generally will lose power. Patients will have more choices, but they'll probably have even less ability to distinguish about what's good and what's not. And you'll see more automation, more technology coming in.